My name is Raymond Carter. I'm 45 years old, and up until that morning, I would have sworn I was not the jealous type. Suspicious? No. Paranoid? Definitely not. I believed in trust, in giving space, in the kind of marriage where you didn't need to ask questions because the answers had always been obvious. Or so I thought. It was a quiet Thursday, the kind where nothing should happen. The sky was still gray when I got up, the light outside soft, filtered through the slats of our bedroom blinds. I padded down the hallway, fed the dog, started the coffee, went through my morning routine like any other day in the past 22 years of marriage. Lena was still asleep when I first woke up, curled toward the edge of the bed in that fetal position she always slipped into when the weather turned cold. She got up around 6:30 and headed straight into the shower. I stayed behind in bed a little longer, scrolling through my phone in that half-awake fog where nothing feels urgent. It was quiet in the room, aside from the faint hiss of water behind the bathroom door. That's when her smartwatch buzzed on the nightstand. I wouldn't have looked if it had buzzed once, but it buzzed twice. Rapid, sharp, startled me. I glanced over out of instinct. Just a glance, I told myself. That's all it was. But the screen lit up and the message preview showed just enough. Can't stop thinking about last night. You smelled like cinnamon and freedom. My breath caught. Just a split second of confusion at first. Cinnamon and freedom? I read it again, slower this time, thinking maybe I'd misread something. But there it was, plain as day. Not a spam text, not a weather alert, not even remotely professional. And then my eyes dropped to the contact. Just a single initial, B. No last name, no photo, no heart emoji or nickname, just B. At first, I sat there frozen, watching the screen fade back to black like it had never happened. My mind reeled. I've read enough dumb novels and seen enough late-night dramas to know that these moments never happen when you're ready for them. They sneak up on you when your mouth still tastes like mouthwash and you're wearing the same t-shirt from the night before. I heard the water shut off in the shower. A few seconds later, Lena came out in her towel, rubbing her hair with one hand, humming to herself like she didn't have a message that could shatter a marriage sitting 2 feet from me. She looked like she always did, comfortable, familiar. No sign of guilt, no awkward pause. She didn't even glance at the watch. "Hey!" she said, her voice warm, like it had been every morning for over 2 decades. "Coffee ready yet?" I kept my tone easy, casual. "Yeah, almost. Quick question though. Who's B?" She paused, towel still in her hair, then blinked at me. Just once. No gasp. No stumble. "Oh, Becca from the office," she said. Too quickly. "She's always texting weird stuff." She meant the cider tasting yesterday. You know how dramatic she gets. She said it like it was nothing. No shift in her voice. No flushed cheeks. Not even a flinch. "Cider tasting," I repeated, forcing a half smile. "Right? Yeah, that makes sense." She smiled again. One of those soft, closed-lip smiles that said conversation over, and walked to the dresser, unbothered, pulling out leggings and a long-sleeve top like it was just another morning. But I couldn't shake the way she said it. Not just the words themselves, but the smoothness of them. Like she'd practiced. Like this wasn't the first time she had to come up with a quick explanation. I stood there a few seconds longer than I should have, staring at the watch, heart pounding louder than the drip of the coffee maker. There's this thing that happens when you suspect something but haven't confirmed it yet. Your brain tries to fill in the blanks with excuses. You don't want to believe the worst, so you scramble for any alternative that keeps your world intact. It's just Becca. She's dramatic. You know that. Lena said so. And yet, I couldn't stop replaying that message in my head. You smelled like cinnamon and freedom. Who says something like that to their coworker after a cider tasting? What kind of office joke sounds like a line straight out of a love letter? I went downstairs and poured the coffee. My hands were steady, but I felt the edges of something beginning to fray inside me. Lena came down a few minutes later, hair damp, face freshly made up. She always got ready fast. Too fast sometimes. She kissed me on the cheek again and asked about my day ahead. I said something vague about a site inspection and invoices. My words barely registered. My thoughts were back upstairs, where that message still sat hidden in a notification panel that I wasn't supposed to see. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. We drove to work in separate cars, like usual. I kissed her goodbye at the door, like usual. She waved from her car window, like usual. But for the first time in years, none of it felt routine. It felt staged. By the time I got to the office, that single line of text had already carved itself into the inside of my skull. I opened my laptop and stared at the screen, not really seeing anything. That damn phrase kept looping. Cinnamon. And freedom. Freedom from what? From me? I remembered how, just 2 weeks ago, I had found a receipt from a boutique fragrance store tucked in her coat pocket. She told me she bought a gift for Becca's birthday. I hadn't thought twice about it. I'd smiled. Believed her. But now? Now I couldn't tell if that had been the first lie or just one of many. By lunch, I was spiraling. I'd always trusted Lena. Blindly. Maybe even stupidly. We'd been together since college. We built everything together, our home, our business, our little routines. I was the provider. The planner. The one who kept the wheels turning. And she was the center of it all. But suddenly, that center felt shaky. Like a loose floorboard under my feet. I wanted to call her. Ask her again. Push for more. But what would I say? Hey, just wanted to double-check, are you sleeping with someone named B? No. I wasn't ready to be that guy. Not yet. So instead, I did what I always do when something feels out of my control. I started paying attention. Watching. Listening. And deep down, a part of me that I didn't recognize, one that had been dormant for years, began to wake up. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was something quieter. Sharper. Something that whispered, you saw the truth. Now, what are you going to do about it? That message didn't just rattle me, it rearranged something in my brain. Once doubt settles in, it doesn't leave quietly. It kicks its feet up, makes coffee, and starts repainting everything you thought you knew in different colors. The next few days felt like a slow unraveling. I didn't say anything to Lena, but I started seeing the world differently, like I had finally adjusted a lens that had been foggy for years. And through it, I started seeing what I had missed. The late nights. That had been the first thing. It started maybe 6 months ago. At first, Lena said her agency had landed a new logistics client, some regional account that came with crazy hours and tighter deadlines. I didn't question it. I was proud of her, actually. She'd worked hard to move up and she deserved to lead big projects. But then it became a pattern. Mondays, Thursdays, sometimes weekends. I'd cook dinner and wait and she'd text, running late. Don't wait up. Love you. I'd wrap up her plate in foil and leave it in the fridge. Some nights she'd eat it. Some nights she wouldn't. I figured she was tired. Stressed. Who wasn't? But looking back, it was more than that. She stopped bringing work home. Her laptop stayed zipped shut. And she'd come back dressed too well for late meetings, like she'd stepped off a magazine shoot. High heels, hair curled, that spicy perfume that lingered even after she'd showered. Once I hugged her as she walked in and noticed it, something masculine underneath all that sweetness. It wasn't mine. Not even close. I asked about it then, teasing, you stealing some executive's cologne now? She laughed, said it was from a shared Uber. I let it go. I always let it go. Even Mason noticed. He's our son, 19 now, in that half-independent phase where he's technically living with us while pretending he's not. Over the last year, he pulled away from Lena. Nothing dramatic, just quiet shifts. Fewer chats in the kitchen. No more movie nights with her. He started confiding in me more, asking to help out at my job sites during school breaks. One day over breakfast, I casually asked him if everything was okay between them. He hesitated, then said, I don't know. Mom's just not really here anymore. I shrugged it off then. Said she was probably just distracted with work. But now? That memory played differently. Like he had been trying to warn me. I kept going back to the name B. I searched Lena's Instagram one night when she was asleep. No Becca in her follows. Her company website had a few names I didn't recognize, but no Becca. I checked the last 10 texts on her phone when she left it charging downstairs one evening. Nothing labeled B. But then again, I knew she was smart enough to delete things, to rename contacts, to hide things from someone she knew wouldn't go looking. And maybe that was part of the problem. I hadn't gone looking. Not until now. I started replaying conversations in my head. Like a few weeks ago when I came up behind her while she was on her phone in the kitchen. She actually jumped, like I'd snuck up on her with a foghorn. She laughed it off, said she didn't hear me come in. But I remember the way she immediately flipped the phone face down on the counter. Then there was the time she left her car unlocked in the driveway. I got in to move it so I could get the mower out, and her phone lit up as I shifted the gear. B calling. I didn't answer, just stared at it as it rang. She came rushing out seconds later, half smiling but nervous. "That idiot from logistics again," she muttered, grabbing the phone. "He keeps sending me spreadsheets in the middle of the night." She said it like it was an annoyance, but she clutched that phone like it was a life preserver. There was another time, about 2 months ago, when she got home around 11:15 p.m. I was still awake, watching reruns, and I asked how the meeting went. She looked confused for half a second, like she forgot what the lie was, then smiled and said, "Long, but productive." I didn't catch it then, but I remember thinking, she doesn't even look tired. I chalked it all up to stress or overwork or maybe even a midlife crisis. But now I realized it wasn't that the signs weren't there. It's that I didn't want to see them. And maybe that's the real gut punch. Lena didn't change overnight. She shifted piece by piece, subtle, intentional, and slow enough that I never questioned it. Like boiling a frog. You don't notice until the water's already too hot. She started dressing different. Not bad, just bolder. Tighter jeans. Deeper necklines. Red lipstick when she used to wear clear gloss. She started buying clothes I didn't recognize. Once I asked about a new leather jacket she wore to a work dinner. She waved it off and said it was from a sample sale. But the tag, still attached, said Belvedere Boutique, one of those upper-floor places in the nicer part of town. Not exactly a bargain rack. And then there were the work trips. 2 months ago, she flew to Austin for what she claimed was a training seminar. I offered to drop her off at the airport. She insisted on taking a lift. Said it was easier that way. I remember thinking she looked nervous that morning, overly affectionate, hugging me a little longer, kissing my forehead like I was the one going away. She sent one picture from the hotel. Her legs propped up by the pool, a book on her lap, captioned, "Finally a minute to breathe." I smiled when I got it. Sent back a heart emoji. But now I remember the odd angle. The hotel name wasn't in the background. Her book title was blurred. No faces. No coworkers. Just the illusion of calm. And the truth is, I wanted to believe it. Because believing anything else would mean admitting that the woman I built my life with was no longer beside me. That she had drifted, slowly and silently, into someone else's world while I was still buying groceries and fixing leaky faucets like everything was fine. I didn't know what to do with all of this yet. I didn't have a plan. But I knew this. Things were no longer okay. And I couldn't pretend anymore. Something had changed. Not just in Lena, but in me. Suspicion is like a leak in the ceiling. At first it's just a damp spot you ignore. But once it soaks through, once the drip starts, you can't stop hearing it. That's where I was. The name B haunted me. It clung to everything Lena said. Every smile. Every late night. I couldn't think straight anymore. I stopped focusing at work. I caught myself staring into space, zoning out on conference calls. People asked if I was tired. I wasn't tired. I was drowning. I decided I needed more than guesses. More than gut feelings and lipstick shades I didn't recognize. I needed facts. I called an old friend of mine, Eli, a tech guy who used to work security contracts before pivoting to ethical hacking. We met at a coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday. I told him I needed access to deleted messages. Stuff synced to the cloud from Lena's laptop. He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. "Is this about what I think it's about?" he asked. I didn't answer directly. I didn't need to. He nodded slowly and said, "I'll set something up. Won't leave a trace. You'll get a private inbox with anything her system offloads or tries to erase." I didn't feel proud of what I was doing. I felt cold, quiet, like a version of myself I didn't recognize, but I also didn't care. 3 days later, I got a notification. 11 files recovered. My hands shook as I opened the folder. The first message was like a knife. "I feel alive again, Brandon. Last night's room was the best thing that's happened to me in years. Ray doesn't get it, he's just convenient. But with you, I can breathe. Brandon. Not B from marketing. Not Becca from accounting. Brandon." I sat there staring at the name like it had weight. Like just reading it made the room smaller. I Googled it. Full name, Brandon Kellerman. Regional Director. Mid-30s. Logistics firm. Smug LinkedIn photo with a navy blue suit and a grin like he'd never been told no. His company had inked a contract with Lena's agency earlier that year. It all clicked. I scrolled down through the rest of the messages. Some were long, emotional. Others short and dirty. I read every word like a punishment I deserved. I can't stop thinking about you in that hotel mirror. Do you think he knows? I hate lying to Mason, but I'm not ready to give up what we have. My breath caught at that one. Mason. Our son. I had wondered how deep this went, but now I knew. It wasn't just me she'd deceived. It was our whole family. She had made a choice. She'd stepped out of one life and into another without ever bothering to shut the door behind her. One message had a date and a hotel, Granite Oaks Hotel. Friday. Room 428. I stared at it for a long time. That was tomorrow. I don't know what I was expecting. That they'd cancel? That she'd feel some cosmic ripple and know I'd found out? But no. She came home that night with Thai takeout, smiling like nothing was wrong. She kissed me lightly on the cheek and said we should go hiking soon. It's been forever. I almost laughed. Hiking. As if a mountain trail could fix this canyon that had opened between us. I didn't say a word. Just nodded. Yeah. Let's plan something. I watched her eat pad thai across from me at the table and felt like I was watching a stranger impersonate my wife. The next night, I told her I had a late vendor meeting and might stay near the site overnight. She nodded, barely interested. Said she was tired and might go to bed early. But I knew exactly where she'd be. I arrived at Granite Oaks around 9:45 p.m. The lobby smelled like citrus and bleach. I wore a ball cap low, hoodie zipped halfway. The bar was to the left, low lights, quiet jazz, two bartenders cleaning glasses like in some war flick. I sat at the end and ordered water. I didn't want anything to cloud what I was about to see. At 10:04 p.m., the elevator doors opened. She stepped out. Lena. My wife. The mother of my child. Wearing a fitted black dress and heels I didn't recognize. Laughing. Beside her was Brandon. One hand casually on her lower back. They didn't look around. They didn't check over their shoulders. They were comfortable. Like this was routine. They walked across the lobby, said something to the concierge, and then, just like that, stepped into the elevator. Again. The doors closed behind them. The number flickered up to 4. Room 428. I stayed at the bar another 10 minutes. Then I left. I didn't want to see them come back down. What would I even do? Throw a punch? Demand answers? No. I'd already seen enough. More than enough. I drove home in silence. No music. No phone. Just the sound of my breath in the car and the ticking of the turn signal at every red light. I parked in the driveway. Sat there for 20 minutes. The house looked the same. Lights off. Peaceful. Inside, I stood in the kitchen and stared at the fridge. Our family calendar was still pinned there with magnets, little color-coded blocks that mapped out our lives. Dentist appointments. Mason's midterms. Lena's meetings. I wanted to rip it down. But I didn't. I went to bed. The next morning, she came home at 7:58 a.m., exactly the time she said she'd get back from her early meeting. Hair slightly tousled. Holding 2 coffee cups and a bag of croissants from her favorite bakery. Figured I'd surprise you, she said, setting the bag on the counter. I looked at her like she was made of glass. And for the first time, I didn't feel love. Or jealousy. Or even anger. I felt done. She smiled like nothing had changed. Croissants, fresh coffee, a kiss on the cheek. Like she hadn't just spent the night in a hotel bed with another man. Like I hadn't watched her walk into that elevator with him, heels clicking, hair perfect, laughing like she'd never laughed with me. I stared at the bag she set down, wondering if the receipt inside listed 2 items or 3. I didn't open it. Didn't say a word. She went upstairs to change. I heard the zipper of her dress slide down, the soft thump of heels hitting the floor. The woman I married, who once cried when we lost power and had to eat cold soup for dinner, was humming. Humming. I stood in the kitchen and held the edge of the counter so tightly my knuckles went white. I don't know how I didn't scream. Or break something. Maybe I was too tired. Or maybe the part of me that should have reacted had already been hollowed out. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Mason. He was at his apartment near campus. Said he'd be over in 30. When he walked through the door, I saw the look in his eyes, the cautious, knowing kind. Like he already sensed why I called. We sat at the table, the croissants still untouched between us. I didn't dance around it. I need to ask you something, I said. And I want the truth. He nodded slowly, arms folded, shoulders tight. How long have you known? I asked. About your mother. His jaw flexed. His eyes dropped to the floor. About what? You know what? He didn't answer right away. Just let out a long breath and said, I've seen her with him. The guy. Brandon. The name landed heavy, even though I'd already heard it before. When? I asked, my voice more fragile than I wanted it to be. First time was about 3 months ago, he said. I was leaving that indie theater on 5th. I saw them outside the hotel across the street. She was wearing that gray coat with the tie at the waist. He was holding the door for her. I didn't speak. Couldn't. I didn't want to believe it, Mason continued. But after that I noticed more. The late nights. Her excuses. She started avoiding me too. Like she knew I could tell. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, and my voice cracked right down the middle. He looked up. His eyes were red. Because I didn't know what to do, Dad. You guys were my example. You've been together forever. I thought maybe she just needed time. Or space. Or maybe it would pass. I leaned back in my chair, staring at him like he was a stranger. Like I was hearing him for the first time. You said nothing, I repeated, quieter this time. He looked wounded. What would you have done if I had? You would have thought I was wrong. You would have told me to focus on school and stop imagining things. He wasn't wrong. I probably would have. But that didn't soften the blow. It wasn't just Lena who had kept the truth from me. It was Mason too. My own son. My legacy. The one person I thought would never leave me in the dark. And that made it worse. That made it cut deeper than the affair itself. Because when the people you've built your life around silently decide that your pain is less important than their comfort, there's no coming back from that. That night, Lena came into the bedroom like she always did. Casual. Calm. As if the world hadn't tilted under my feet. I watched her change into her pajamas, brush her hair, and sit beside me. You've been quiet today, she said softly, reaching for my hand. Pulled away. She froze. What's wrong? I turned to her slowly. My voice was low. Even. Empty. Don't do that. Her face shifted, confusion first, then fear. Do what? Don't pretend. She blinked. Ray, I don't know what. I was at Granite Oaks. The silence was immediate and deafening. I saw you, I continued, with Brandon. I watched you walk into that elevator. I know. She didn't move, didn't speak. For a second, she looked like she couldn't breathe. Then her lips parted. Ray! No, I said. Stop. Don't insult me with lies. Don't make this uglier than it already is. She stood up suddenly, backing away like I'd slapped her. Her voice was trembling now. I didn't mean. I don't care, I said. Not anymore. She opened her mouth again, but I cut her off. You made your choice, and you made it over and over and over again. While I was at work, while I was cooking dinner, while I was asking about your day and pretending not to notice when you flinched every time your phone buzzed. She stood there like she was waiting for the floor to swallow her whole. I gave you everything, I said. Every bit of me. And you decided I was a placeholder. No, she whispered. You were never that. You just didn't want to be bored. She covered her face with both hands. Her voice came out as a sob. I didn't mean to hurt you. Well, I said, standing up. You did. I left the room. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the den, surrounded by framed photos of a life that felt like fiction. One in particular caught my eye, our last family trip to Charleston. Mason was grinning in his oversized hoodie. Lena was squinting against the sun. I was behind the camera, like always behind, always supporting, always believing. And now I was alone in a house filled with ghosts. Not of people who had died, but of people who had changed. The next morning, Lena tried to talk again, tried to sit down, to reach for my hand. I didn't move. I'll do anything, she said. Counseling, therapy, I'll cut ties with him, whatever it takes. But her eyes, those same eyes I used to trust, looked panicked. Not regretful, not sorry, just desperate. You're sorry you got caught, I said. She didn't deny it. I looked at her one last time and said, "I'm leaving. You can keep the house, the accounts, all of it." She shook her head. "Don't do this." "I'm not doing anything, Lena. I'm honoring what you already did." Then I packed a bag. Just the essentials. Clothes, laptop, a few books. I didn't even take the watch she bought me last Christmas. I left that behind too. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't yell. I didn't leave a dramatic note or break a picture frame on my way out. That's not who I am. And anyway, the damage had already been done. The apartment I found was a short-term rental on the east side of town. Nothing fancy. Just a one-bedroom above a bakery with creaky floors and thin walls. The place smelled like burnt sugar and old books. I sat on the futon that doubled as a couch and stared at my duffel bag. It didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like an ending I wasn't prepared for. Lena texted me 6 times the first night. I didn't answer. The next day, she called. I let it ring. On the 3rd attempt, I blocked her number. This wasn't about being cruel. This was about finally creating silence. After months, maybe years of noise, 2 days later, we sat in a lawyer's office. The conference room was all glass and polished stone. The kind of cold, quiet place where things get split into legal terms. Assets, property, custody, if applicable. It all sounds so clean on paper. But there's nothing clean about dividing a life. She sat across from me in a beige sweater, hair tied back, eyes red from crying. "Ray," she said softly, "you don't have to do this. We can. We're past we," I said. My lawyer slid the documents forward. I signed everything without asking for a dime. I didn't want the house. I didn't want the car. I didn't want to touch the joint accounts. I just wanted my name back, detached and intact. "Are you sure about this?" the lawyer asked. "You're entitled to." "I'm sure," I said, not breaking eye contact with Lena. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. And maybe she didn't. Maybe the version of me she'd learned to lie to was already gone. As we left the office, she caught up to me in the hallway. "I made a mistake," she said. "You made a lot of them," I replied. "And I lived in all of them." She didn't follow me after that. That night, Mason came by. He'd heard from Lena. Of course he had. He looked like he hadn't slept. His hoodie hung loose on him, his hair longer than I remembered. He stood in the doorway of my little apartment like he didn't belong there. Like the idea of me being somewhere other than home still didn't feel real to him. "You really left?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I did." He stepped inside and sat on the arm of the futon, knees bouncing. "She's not doing great." I raised an eyebrow. What did she think would happen? He didn't have an answer, just stared at the floor. "I know I should have told you sooner," he said quietly. "Yeah," I said. "You should have." He flinched at that, visibly, like I'd finally said the one thing he didn't want to hear. "But I get it," I added after a pause. "You were trying to protect someone. I just wish it had been me." He nodded. That was the first moment it felt like we were actually having a conversation, not just a formality. Not just 2 men trying to tiptoe around a wound. "I never thought you'd walk away," he said. I laughed, but not in a funny way. "Neither did I." There's something no one tells you about betrayal, about real, soul-ripping betrayal. It doesn't just destroy the love you had. It destroys the story, the version of your life that you believed in. You lose the future you planned, the weekends you imagined, the comfort of old routines. And once that's gone, what's left? Mason came by a few times that week, just to sit, mostly. We talk about random stuff, sports, the dog, what kind of TV I should buy for the new place. The conversations were awkward at first, but something softened with each visit. He wasn't trying to fix anything. He was just showing up. And that counted for something. About a week later, Lena sent me a letter through the lawyer. It wasn't legal, just a handwritten note. I didn't read it. I saw the handwriting and tossed it into the drawer under the sink. I wasn't ready to hear her version of regret. Because regret, I've learned, is just the echo of choices people never had the courage to own in the moment. By the end of the month, I had a rhythm. Wake up, make coffee, walk to the pier, think, come back, Work remote from the kitchen table. I even found a little restaurant space on the edge of Savannah. Something I never planned, but had always secretly imagined. The kind of place where the food was simple, the hours were long, and everything smelled like garlic and possibility. It would take time, money, and patience, but for the first time in a long time I had those again. Mason showed up one afternoon, holding a laptop and a folder. "What's this?" I asked. "Your new brand," he said. I blinked. "What?" "You said you wanted the place to feel honest." So I sketched out some names and logo ideas. I also found a couple of eco-friendly suppliers and a program that helps feed seniors in the area. "Thought you could tie that into the mission." I just stared at him. He shuffled awkwardly. "I know I screwed up, but if you'll let me, I want to help build something real." I nodded slowly. "You want in?" "I want to earn my way in," he said. "From the bottom." "Good," I said. "Then you're on dishes." He grinned. And just like that, something started to repair. Not because we ignored the cracks, but because we acknowledged them and decided to build anyway. The next day, I walked past a mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Not because he looked different, but because, for once, he didn't look defeated. He looked free. The restaurant opened 6 months after I signed the lease. Ray's Honest Table. A name that felt more like a promise than a brand. We served simple food made from scratch, nothing frozen, nothing faked. Every plate came with something I'd lost for a long time: care. It started slow. Locals wandered in. Tourists followed. People liked the story, a guy walking away from a broken life and building something that tasted like truth. And just when the dust had started to settle, Mason came back. He stood at the entrance in his wrinkled shirt and scuffed sneakers, looking smaller than I remembered. "Hey," he said. "Got a minute?" I nodded. We sat in the corner booth. No one bothered us. He looked up and said it flat out. "Mom's a mess." He left her. "The guy. Brandon." I didn't say a word. I didn't flinch. "She's not eating. She's not talking much. She said she made the worst mistake of her life." Still, I stayed quiet. Mason kept going. "I was wrong too, Dad. Back then I thought maybe what she did could be explained. But I get it now. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a betrayal. Of everything." His voice cracked. "You were always there. Even when I didn't see it. You were always there. That moment didn't fix everything between us, but it opened the door." I hired him part-time, doing dishes, cleaning, running inventory. At first, I think he wanted to prove something. Eventually, it just became who he was. He brought energy into the place. Ideas, too, partnering with local farms, donating leftovers to shelters, using compost bins instead of trash cans. He didn't ask for praise. He just did. Some nights, we'd sit on the porch behind the kitchen after close, drinking tea or splitting the last slice of key lime pie. "I never knew you were this kind of guy," he said once. "What kind of guy?" "The kind who keeps going even when everything falls apart." I smiled. "You just learned to cook with what's left." He nodded, then said something I'd never forget. "I'm proud of you, Dad." It hit harder than I expected. Not because I needed the validation, but because it came from the one person I feared I'd lost completely. A year later, Ray's Honest Table had expanded. 2 more cafes, one inland, one by the water. Mason now oversaw his own line of sustainable goods we sold at the counter: spices, dried herbs, even a honey line branded under Carter & Son. He'd earned it. And me? I met someone. Her name's Alyssa. Architect. Mid-40s. Divorced. Kind eyes and a quiet laugh that makes rooms feel safe. We met when she came in for soup during a rainstorm. She forgot her umbrella. I gave her mine. She returned it the next day. And then came back the next week. We didn't rush anything. Just started walking beside each other, piece by piece, with all the jagged edges out in the open. Turns out she had her own scars. Her own betrayals. Her own empty guest room and unopened letters. We didn't try to complete each other. We just respected the rubble. And built anyway. Lena writes now and then. Emails. A birthday card. A forwarded article about business growth. I don't reply. Not out of hate. I let that go long ago. But because what we had doesn't live here anymore. It ended the night she walked into that elevator. Mason mentioned once she regrets it. Deeply. I believe him. But regret doesn't rebuild what's already burned to ash. Now I stand outside our newest cafe with Mason beside me. The sign reads, Ray's Honest Table, EST in truth. Grown in grace. He turns to me and says, we're a team now. I nod. Now we are. Not because I got revenge. Not because I forced anyone to pay, but because I walked away from the wreckage and chose to start again. Honestly. Fully. And this time for good.